also the interim secretary of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency and responsible for the administration and financial management of the organization. Ladies and gentlemen, by training, Mr. Seth is a civil engineer and has more than 30 years of experience in the power sector, both on the supply and the demand side. We have with us Ms. Priyam Tiwari, who is an associate fellow from the Sustainable Habitat Program, and Ms. Ankita Bukhod, Research Associate, Sustainable Habitat Program, TERI. So now I'll request Mr. Sanjay Seth to take over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kakkar Saab. It's a pleasure again to be associated with the GACS community, and I must compliment you and your teams at GACS for the wonderful initiative that you have taken up to use this time of lockdowns and the pandemic effectively so that we can learn from each other. I mean, I don't say that we come, sermonizing or with all the knowledge, but it is a good time to be sharing experiences and learning from each other. And today we are very pleased that on the platform of GACS, TERI is co-hosting this webinar on creating a healthy and comfortable indoor environment and in the context of green buildings. I am privileged to be associated with my two colleagues, Priyam Tiwari and Ankita, who would be taking us through this entire concept. They have put together a wonderful presentation, which I'm sure that the participants would like to listen to or see through. I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to all our participants. Thank you for making it here, and I hope that it's an experience which we take back something through this webinar that we are organizing. We are all in very strange times, and these are having, as you know, impacts of not only on our health but also on the way we lead our lifestyles, the way we are used to working. I think all of it has changed dramatically, and so this is something which probably also teaches us, it further strengthens our resolve that we need to adopt low carbon, low cost solutions to developmental concerns in the built environment. So we need to adopt much more sustainable lifestyles, and if we really want to go ahead in the right direction. And this lockdown has also put us in very, in a very strange world. Most of us, I think all of us actually, are working out of homes, and this is what we are calling the new normal. And the buzzwords that we've been hearing over the past few days are self-isolation, disinfection and sanitization, natural ventilation, community management, and so on and so forth. And besides, of course, the usual herd community and all of those other words that we keep hearing. So it is very important that the living spaces where we spend most of our time do not contribute any further to the deterioration of our health or the environment. So this is something which is very, very critical. And that is why when we look at, say, the foundations of a healthy living space or a healthy building, so as to say, I think the 9 foundations are ventilation, air quality, thermal comforts, moisture, dust and pests, safety and security, water quality, noise, and visual comforts. So some of this, this is going to be discussed during the presentation today by our colleagues. Statistics also suggest that in developing countries such as ours, the indoor air pollution far outweigh that of than those of the outdoor air pollution. So we are always very concerned about the air pollutions outside, not knowing that the indoor air pollutions are as bad as outside. So we we need to be cognizant, and we need to think, kind of ponder over that as well. So we've been talking about, the word that we've used here is green buildings, and what exactly do green buildings do? So the green buildings, basically, they provide you enhanced IEQ, and IEQ is something which my colleagues will be discussing at length today, the indoor environmental quality. Green buildings provide, decreased consumption of materials and water. So they optimize all of these resources. They generate less waste. They are platforms for technical innovation and employment. They reduce energy consumption and emissions, and they are sustainable, and they provide sustainable solutions for public health. So if you look at it overall, the green buildings actually lead to indoor health, resource health, economic health, environmental health, and public health. So these are very, very important elements that we cannot ignore. The pandemic crisis has further led us to believe that it is not only about hygiene and clean indoors, but also ensure that these living spaces are designed such that they allow adequate ventilation and sunlight for a healthy living. Ultimately, a building with efficient resources, consumption, and consequently lower operating costs take on an added appeal in these trying times, especially when combined with healthier and consistently comfortable interiors. So, I think let's appreciate the fact that since we are under these forced conditions that we are operating from, green buildings is something which we should look up to, and they provide the answers to many of the solutions that one looks for. And with that, I once again welcome you and thank the GSCS for providing us this opportunity. And I would want to probably ask Priyam Tiwari if she could begin the presentation. And I think Mr. Luthra has already given you the housekeeping guidelines as to how the question and answers would be done. So let's hand it over to Priyam Tiwari for the rest of the presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, please.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjay sir. So a very good afternoon to all of you. I, Priyam Tiwari, along with my colleague, Ms. Ankita Bhukar, will be presenting on this webinar, which is a very important topic in today's time, creating a healthy and comfortable indoor environment through green buildings. So first of all, I would like to just tell something about ourselves. We at Sustainable Buildings Group, operating under Sustainable Habitat Program at TERI, we are basically dedicated to provide innovative, integrated, and cost-effective solutions to mainstream the principles of sustainability in the building sector through policy research and advocacy, research and development, environmental design consultancy, resource and energy efficiency audit, training and capacity building, and lastly, project management unit. So the flow of presentation will be, we'll giving a brief background on buildings, healthy buildings. Then majorly we will be covering 4 components of indoor environmental quality, that is thermal comfort, indoor air quality, visual comfort, and acoustic comfort. So talking about buildings, the rising living standards and growing population has dramatically increased the energy consumption and has increased greenhouse gas emissions as well. It has been anticipated also that these emissions will increase to about 700% compared to 2005 levels. So in this scenario, buildings which are great consumers of different resources, including energy, raw material, land, water, will significantly contribute in this. And it is also to be noted that bulk of building stock is yet to be built in India by 2030. So under all this scenario, the role of green buildings becomes vital. And so looking towards green buildings definitely incorporate all the environmental considerations at each stage of building design. And it also focuses on operation, maintenance, construction in a very resource efficient manner. So most of the green building certifications bodies, if you see like GRIHA, LEED, IGBC, WELL, EDGE. They all focus on basically site sustainability, water efficiency, energy efficiency. Then they also focus on waste reduction management. They incorporate renewable energy integration and also focus on using recycled and environmental friendly building materials, which significantly reduce the load of green buildings. So basically, looking at all these positive aspects of green buildings, it has been opted that green buildings can reduce significant amount of energy, water, emissions, and solid waste. In addition to this, green buildings also provide us benefit of having lower operational and maintenance cost. Then they reduce GHG emissions significantly and enhance the indoor environmental quality. It has also been found that when a person operates in a well ventilated green building, then their brain functions increase up to 101%, and their due to increased brain function, it has also been reported that the productivity of people increased to approximately 16%. In addition to this, the people who have been living in green buildings have been reported to have better health and well-being. So talking about the healthy buildings, there are basically 9 foundational elements. Ventilation is covered mostly under thermal comfort and indoor air quality. So here I have mentioned approximately 8 foundational elements: indoor air quality, thermal comfort, water quality, dampness and mold, dust and pests, noise levels, equivalents to acoustic comfort, light levels, that is visual comfort, safety and security. So out of these 8, indoor air quality, thermal comfort, noise, acoustic comfort, and visual comfort are found to have the strongest impact on human health and comfort. So basically in this webinar, we will be focusing on these 4 points, and these 4 components also together make the indoor environmental quality. So talking about thermal comfort, basically thermal comfort is as defined by American Society for Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Engineers, ASHRAE. It is a condition of mind that expresses satisfaction with the thermal environment, and it is usually measured as a subjective thing. So basically thermal comfort levels for people vary depending on what their location, what has been their thermal history, then in what conditions they are looking, what are their expectations. So majorly there are 6 parameters which influence the thermal comfort of our building occupant, which includes air temperature, mean radiant temperature, humidity, airspeed, metabolism, and clothing. Basically, the above 4 parameters are dependent on are known as environmental variables, and they are mainly dependent on what are the conditions you have inside the building. And indoor conditions majorly depend on what all HVAC systems you are using, what is the building design, then what are the outdoor conditions you are witnessing. And the last 2, metabolism and clothing rate, they are basically personal variables. So their personal variables are basically user specific, that what metabolism mainly represent what kind of activity you are involved in. Suppose you are running or sleeping or doing light desk work, so your metabolic rate will vary depending on activity to activity, and also on clothing. So clothing basically reflects that suppose if we are in summer, we opt for light clothing, and in winters our clothing gradually increases. So this can be user control, and the above 4 are usually in the control of building operation. So out of these above environmental parameters, basically operative temperature has been found to best reflect the comfort levels. Operative temperature definitely includes air temperature, mean radiant temperature, and air velocity. Talking about the approaches of thermal comfort, there are basically 2 approaches of thermal comfort: steady state approach and adaptive thermal comfort approach. So adaptive thermal comfort, steady state approach is based on heat balance model, which was first introduced in year 1985, and it was mainly based on how the heat exchange happens between people and outdoor conditions. We all know that all of us inside our bodies generate heat continuously. So continuous heat generation, and then we are also continuously exchanging heat with our outdoor environment. So whenever there is an imbalance between these 2 parameters, a state of thermal discomfort arises. So based on this approach, 2 thermal comfort indices were introduced which are correlated, that is predicted mean mode, PMV, and PPD. till now, even the thermal comfort standard, which is very famous from ASHRAE, American Society for Refrigeration Air Conditioning Engineers, ASHRAE 55, focuses on thermal comfort, and it also used to follow this approach. But lately, because this approach has been developed based on studies carried out in well-sealed buildings of Europe, mainly Denmark, so it was found to underestimate the comfort level of people who are basically living in tropical countries like India, which witnesses high temperatures, and they have different socio-cultural differences, plus adaptations are different. So recently, a decade back, adaptive approach of thermal comfort was introduced, which mainly takes into account the behavioral, technological adjustments which people make, habituation of people, and acclimatization of people. Basically, adaptive approach of thermal comfort believes that whenever there's a condition of discomfort, people try to restore their comfort using adaptive actions like operating fans, opening and closing of windows accordingly, adjusting their thermostats, taking hot and cold drinks. So there are different adaptive actions which have been also uh, found and in the buildings, and it greatly impacts the thermal comfort of people. Talking about adaptive thermal comfort, basically adaptive thermal comfort has witnessed that the comfort boundaries proposed by steady state approach are very stringent and very narrow for Indian subjects. And there have been a lot of field studies which have found evidences that PMV PPD model underestimates our comfort. So in one of the studies I was involved in, I did my doctoral research on, is to study the thermal comfort levels inside evaporatively cooled buildings. So basically, you see this psychrometric chart. On the x-axis, there is a operative temperature. On the y-axis, there is specific humidity. And this red zone is basically thermal comfort zone by ASHRAE 55 and based on steady state approach. So it is assumed that if an indoor condition falls inside this zone, it will be a comfortable condition for the building occupant. But when we collected responses from approximately 1,500 people who are working in evaporatively cooled buildings, we found that more than 50% of the subjects were falling outside this zone. And then based on different types of adaptations, we resketched the comfort boundaries based on 80% acceptability criteria. So we found that at different ranges of indoor air speeds, the comfort boundaries were expanded, and it can be seen it as a evidence that people living in tropical countries are comfortable at higher temperatures. Now, if we talk about thermal comfort bandwidths, then definitely no, we cannot say a one particular temperature or RH at which people will be comfortable, but there will be a particular bandwidth on which we can say people will find comfort, because it is a subjective thing, and we need to see that approximately 80% or 90% of the population is comfortable. So recently, ASHRAE launched its IEQ standard, in which it focused on the 4 parameters of IEQ, and also looking at thermal comfort for different types of buildings having low and medium activity values. The comfort ranges were defined for summer and winter season. Now, if you look at the RH in the comfort zone, we had presented that RH up to 90% was comfortable. But recently in ASHRAE COVID-19 guidelines and different studies being carried out across the world have found that RH between 40 to 70% definitely reduces the chances of COVID infection spreading. So higher temperatures and RH between 40 to 70 will be taken as an optimum combination for resuming thermal comfort inside your buildings. Now, talking about how to attain comfort through buildings. So through building design will be the first step. Building design definitely looks at what will be your orientation, that what will be the window wall ratio, how the envelope is designed, then what are passive heating and cooling strategies you are using, and what is shading, how the means of ventilation is being taken care. So basically, if we are living in a hot climate, then light colored surface usually reflect most of the radiations. Then also using high thermal mass, It in summer season, it has been recorded that thermal mass reduces indoor temperatures by up to 7 degrees centigrade. So incorporating such strategies can definitely yield a higher degree of comfort, and green buildings are designed taking into account all of these design strategies. So it has been found that it clearly reflects your comfort. Now, one of the studies which prioritize the most effective strategies for achieving indoor comfort for different climatic zones. Since all of us know that India is a country of diverse geographical features and witnesses varied climatic conditions across the nation. So based on climatic classification of India, which is classified into 5 climatic zones, these basically, if we talk about Ahmedabad, which falls in hot and dry climate, sun shading, night cooling, air tightness, and insulation can be very effective. And all six strategies can approximately lower your air conditioning by up to 4 to 5 times. So similarly, in warm and humid, if we see that most of the warm and humid climates are found near coastlines. So coastlines usually have a cool breeze running in the evening. So night coolings are found to be very effective in these areas. So similarly, composite climate also has these strategies provide very comfortable conditions. If we talk about temperate climate also, then sun shading, insulation, night cooling, and direct cooling are very strategies which help you achieve indoor comfort. And in cold regions like Shillong, air tightness insulation, passive solar heat gain are most effective to reduce your heating loads. Shillong also witnesses some time of summer, so night cooling, direct cooling, and sun shading are effective in these areas. Jumping on to indoor air quality, we all know that indoor quality includes all the chemical, radiological, biological, and physical pollutants. So basically, ASHRAE Standard 62, which focuses mainly on ventilation of buildings, it defines acceptable IAQ as air in which we have contaminants, but not at harmful concentrations. And also witnessing that majority of the people are satisfied with the prevailing indoor air quality. Now, what are the factors which influence indoor air quality? First, pollutants generated indoors through building products, human activity, consumer products. Pollutants generated outdoors, diesel exhaust, generator exhaust, pre-burning of waste, and pollutants from building systems, which will be through poor ventilation, cavity filters, moisture penetration. Now, if we talk about indoor air quality, usually when we monitor indoor air quality inside buildings, mainly 3 components are looked into. One is particulate pollutants, that is PM 2.5, PM 10, gaseous pollutants, CO2, CO, VOC. VOC is volatile organic compounds, then formaldehyde, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, ozone. Biological pollutants, bacteria, fungi, mites, virus, etc. So in the ASHRAE IEQ guidelines, there are basically 3 classes in which you can assess your indoor air quality. Class A being the most stringent one, and you can see that occupant satisfaction over here is that you should achieve at least 90% of the people are satisfied with the prevailing indoor air quality. Then class B, then class C, and also they have some basic IAQ parameters which you need to record, and then complementary IAQ parameters. Now, if we talk about indoor air quality, what should be our strategies to maintain indoor air quality? First is source control. So if we talk about source control, it is nothing but reducing our contaminants at the source level. So basically using paints which do not have formaldehyde or volatile organic compounds. Then there are so many furnitures which continuously emit. So we should reduce all of these sources for maintaining IAQ. Then ventilation has been found to be most effective in maintaining indoor air quality. So ventilation, regular performance and monitoring of ventilation systems is very important. If we are having ventilation systems, then definitely we should look at continuous at what all ducts we have. Then cleaning of dampers, which enhance the ventilation. So it should not be the case that the ventilation is there, you have mechanisms in place, but they are not functional properly, or they are in a degraded quality, which instead of improving your IAQ, degrades your IAQ. So continuous check on these is very important. Lastly, air cleaning. First is air purifiers. So through air purifiers, if we place them inside a room, it will purify your air. And also if we have filters in your air conditioning unit, or if you have fans over there, then continuous cleaning of these is important, because it will definitely reflect your indoor air quality, reflect in your indoor air quality. And also if you look talk about COVID-19, then there is HEPA filters. So HEPA filters are basically high efficiency particulate absorbing filters, which are introduced in many of the air conditioning units. So they reduce a lot of chances on development of infections. So use of HEPA filters must be recommended. This was all about IAQ and thermal comfort. Now I would like to invite my colleague, Ms. Ankita Bhokhar, to tell about visual comfort and acoustic comfort.
Thank you, Priya, for sharing your views and insight on thermal comfort and indoor air quality. Taking the discussion ahead, we would be talking about visual comfort and acoustical comfort in buildings. The basic flow of discussion of these two parameters would be as displayed on your screens right now. So beginning with visual comfort, let us understand what is visual comfort. In the simplest sense, visual comfort is our reaction to the quality and quantity of light within any space at a given time. The concept of visual comfort depends on our ability to control the light levels around us. Both too little and too much light can cause visual discomfort. It encompasses various aspects such as access to the views of outside spaces, quality of light, both in terms of temperature and color, luminosity, which basically refers to the total amount of light a source emits, and the absence of glare. While on one hand, looking at these parameters help us understand what governs visual comfort, it would also be helpful to understand what is visual discomfort actually. So visual discomfort is experienced by glare and extreme lux levels that may impair us from performing tasks that require visual engagement. One of the common examples that we experience of this is driving on a highway during a hot summer afternoon. An example of experiencing visual discomfort from when you are in a building is when a person's desk is placed too close to a window, which does not have any blinds or any kind of shading, and they experience the glare that is reflected from adjacent streets and neighboring buildings. Another example of glare is when a person's desk or the computer screen is aligned in such a way that the light from the window falls directly on the screen, making them unable to view the display unit properly. On the screens right now is displayed some recommended light levels from NBC 2016 of some of the common spaces that we have in an office area. So that consists of lifts, corridors, rooms, specialized rooms, general office space, auditoriums, and washrooms. So you might notice the illumination level that are maintained against each of these spaces are like 3 in number, in like an ascending order. So for most common cases, what we could follow is the value that is represented in the middle. The higher value of this range should be used when the visual work is critical or the accuracy or higher productivity is required. And also higher levels should be used when the surface reflectance around in a space are low. Similarly, when the lower value of the range may be used when reflectances and contrast in the space around or the surfaces of a space are high. and the speed or accuracy of the task that is getting performed there is not of that importance, or maybe the task is seldom done in that space. So how should we design for better visual comfort? Firstly, we must understand, firstly, we must fulfill to our lighting demands via natural lighting as much as possible. Secondly, and most importantly, when aiming a building to be visually comfortable, giving the control of lighting is the key. This basically means that separate zones of a particular space should be able to have access to light modulation as and when required, depending on user preference as well as the task that needs to be performed and in the particular space. The points discussed just now are illustrated on the screen right now. There are many identified factors that lead to a better visual comfort scenario by the users. To begin with, access to outdoor view, enabling access to daylight is preferred by most users for better task performance. While talking about the access, provision of daylight might not be able to enter into a space sufficiently. In that case, the setup should be supplemented with electrical lighting. Also, in cases where a window or an opening is provided, it might not be able to penetrate the space properly, so that should be supplemented by electrical lighting, like you can see in scenario 4. When performing tasks that require accuracy or high productivity, task light should be considered. For example, the case that you see on the top left of the screen right now, commonly used task lights are adjustable desk lamps that enable you to adjust the height and intensity of the lamp that you're using. When using a light source, the user must be able to control the glare and the high contrast emitted by it. For example, the scenario 6 that you see on your screens, it is uncomfortable if you are able to view the filament of the luminaire. So this can be done by using a shaded lamp. The aesthetics of an interior space also rule how a user perceives it and attains visual comfort. Moving on, the building material that we select play an important role in the way we attain visual comfort. This is the reason why many products in the fenestration market have gained popularity based on their properties to restrict heat and glare out of the building, giving us a comfortable experience inside a building. These are mostly glasses, specialized glasses that cut out glare, tinted glasses, and also specialized films that attain the same task. Also, a very important aspect that could be considered while planning the buildings and spaces are the sizes and position of openings in it, their orientation on the facade with respect to solar movement. In the past decade, as more research was done on aspects of visual comfort, promising results were observed in the area that encourage building practitioners everywhere to incorporate measures in their building spaces. To summarize shortly, better visual comfort has been observed to lead to better staff performance, overall health of the users, leading to lesser sick leaves, better focus on tasks, increased in productivity in office spaces. A few examples from the retail sector have been increased employee satisfaction and enhanced customer experience, which led to longer durations of engagement, leading to better response in retail. Discussing all of the above, it gives me great pleasure to share with you that we at TERI have been doing some technical work in the domain of visual comfort ourselves. We did launch a glare management guideline for artificial lighting under the scope of work for the Mahindra TERI Center of Excellence for Sustainable Habitat. And also under the same project, we are right now coming up with a study of sky model that would give us details of quality and quantity of daylight that is available for us to utilize when designing buildings for daylighting. Moving on to the aspect of acoustical comfort. Acoustical comfort is the perception of well-being the users of a building have with respect to the acoustic environment of the building, which consists of noise produced by elements present indoor and outdoor the building. Designing for acoustic comfort consists of minimizing intruding noise to maintain satisfaction among the users. Again, to understand acoustic comfort better, it would be easier to find out what causes acoustic discomfort. So ideally, most workplaces should be such that sound of conversation or other tasks being performed should not percolate out of a space, leading to disturbance to others. Common acoustical issues and hindrances faced by many of us in general are inability to have a private discussion, being able to hear noises from adjacent spaces through partition, too much noise in a room when people engage in conversation, and being able to hear sounds from air registers. Having said this, let us understand the physical aspect of acoustical comfort. The way we make the distinction between loud and quiet noises is made by the difference in the scale of pressure changes commonly measured in decibels. The pitch of any sound is expressed as its frequency, which is the number of vibration cycles per second. A healthy human ear is able to sense frequencies ranging from 20 to 20,000 Hertz. Coming to designing for acoustic comfort, the first thing to realize is that what is the purpose of the space going to be? What kind of activities are to be performed in the area? What are the types of noises that need to be managed in a space in order to ensure the best task performed? For example, is the purpose of the space to contain the noise created into the interiors, or to restrict the noise that are created from exterior sources? What is the spectrum of noise to be managed in terms of the decibel level and pitch level? The material used in a space plays a major role in this. For example, a stone monument is more echoey compared to a wooden auditorium, which is why since history, theaters and auditoriums have used various sound absorbing and dampening materials such as wood and fabric. In recent times, these have been successfully replaced by more efficient and specially designed acoustic boards and panels. Prolonged acoustical discomfort in form of noise or such may lead to numerous undesirable effects on health. Exposure to noise at night may lead to disturbed sleep patterns, leading to compromised productivity during the day. Studies have shown that well-designed sound environments lead to better performance by its users. The various types of sound that we may experience in a building are exterior noises from the traffic or activities that go outside a building, for example, construction activities in nearby areas. Interior noises by sources present inside the building, impact noises from certain activities that are being performed in the building, and equipment noises from equipment such as lifts, air handling units, chiller plants, and boiler rooms. This is the reason why chiller plants and boiler rooms are not really placed in very habitable spaces of a building, of any building. To ensure standard acoustical performance, NBC 2016 lays out some guidelines for what should be the decibel levels in a particular space at a particular time. And identifying excess and uncontrolled noise as a form of pollution, the Central Pollution Control Board lays out guidelines with respect to acceptable levels of noises in different zones of a city at both during day and night times. So having discussed the desirable and undesirable levels of acoustic condition, how do we design for acoustical comfort? Firstly, we need to understand what kind of noises are we looking to manage in a particular case of a building. This is governed by the source of noise and the building envelope and its ability to absorb or reflect that noise. Once we have identified that, all we need to do is understand the ABCs of acoustic design. The ABCs of acoustic design stand for absorb, block, and cover. The above three are usually achieved by various building products such as perforated ceiling tiles, solid cubicle partitions, sound masking panels and boards, and sealing the air gaps between the spaces that allow passing of sounds and noise from one space to other. Considering acoustical comfort in the exterior premises of a building, one could incorporate a buffer zone in the building plan that places the occupied part of a building away from the noise source. So this is a classic example that we mostly see if there's a bigger plot size. The side facing the road usually has a garden or trees, and the building, the habitable part, is placed away from the road area. Protection of habitable spaces by introduction of green belts, public gardens, and in case of multiple buildings in a project, positioning the less vulnerable building closer to the noise sources than the vulnerable building. For example, whenever in the most recent times, the residential apartment complexes that we have that have multiple residential towers, common spaces such as community spaces or market complexes are placed more towards the road than the residential towers themselves. Further, shading and screening by providing solid barriers such as a wall, and provisioning of adequate sound insulation in the building envelope on the walls and the roofs by the provision of ABCs that we just discussed. Researchers have shown that compromised acoustical environment lead to lapses in communication, impaired concentration among the workers present, distraction while performing tasks, and have detrimental impact on health and levels of stress. This forces us to acknowledge and understand the importance of having an optimal acoustical environment in order to ensure productivity and positive health effects of health on users. So with this, we come to the end of our technical discussion. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Folks, any questions, anybody? Mr. Seth, I had got one question from VP Singh Chundawat. He is the leader in Jaipur, our Rajasthan chapter. He had to leave early, but he's sent the question directly to me. What is mentioned is, can we propose any solutions to Delhi government schools, which are multi-story buildings, to provide a safe and healthy environment in these times when schools reopen? Could you please get my question?
Okay, I was not able to unmute myself. I just...
I know, I can understand. Yeah, perfect, sir.
Yes. So I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
I'll just go over again, sir.
Yeah.
He mentioned that, can we propose any solutions to Delhi government schools, which are multi-story buildings, to provide safe and healthy environment in these times when schools reopen? Basically, he's talking about, he's from the CSR activities, looking after CSR in various organizations all across in Rajasthan and in NCR also. So his concern is always about, such like, it's a very nice proposal. He's saying, what can we do for Delhi government schools? Basically,
so,
what is probably, please go ahead.
Yeah, so of course, there are many things that we can do. One, of course, is that, schools, the primary focus, especially with the government schools, there is no air conditioning, and the only, the only thing that they can rely on for improved thermal comforts is the fan, right? So it's important that how you could probably, of course, there are, fortunately, they have been able to provide windows for, natural ventilation. That plays a good role. But then if we adopt the concept of cool roofs, where you are able to, improve the SRI of your roof in such a manner that the heat ingress, you see, because your heat is exposed, or your roof is exposed to the sunlight, to the sun for most part of the day, right? And all the heat absorption into the building takes place through the roof. So if you are able to put I mean, insulation is slightly, I mean, it's going to be slightly more expensive, but it is a one-time effort. But if other than that, there are many ways in which you can introduce the concepts of cool roof. And with that, you are able to ensure that the sun rays don't capture the heat and, you know, kind of allow the heat to flow into the building, but instead it kind of helps you to throw it back into the atmosphere. Okay, so the cool roofs, the concepts that around the cool roof. So there are many ways that one can do this. So that is a very good way. I think that's a very important feature. The other aspects are, of course, Priyam and Ankita in their presentation, they talked about how indoor air quality and the acoustics, because schools acoustics is very important. And since schools are always surrounded by, you know, they are in this, the hub of activities, and in our country, I think we are still far away from people not blowing their horns, especially when driving and all. So I think the solutions that Ankita talked about for reducing acoustic problems, is a very good way, that how you could probably use vegetative covers and all of that, so that you can dampen these noises from outside. So some of these are there, but I think largely it should be around thermal comforts, because we have visited many schools, and when our own children were studying, we go to the classroom, it's like a hot box where these children are made to sit and study. So it's very important that we can improve the thermal comforts of their classrooms.
Perfect, sir. Thanks for that. There are one or two questions I can see out here, sir. Kunal Bisht is asking, how will you relate sustainable building materials used nowadays during construction process with comfort of persons staying in the same building? Basically indoor comfort.
Will you relate sustainable building materials used nowadays during construction process with comfort of persons staying in the same building? Basically indoor comfort. So, Priyam, would you like to answer that? Priyam, are you there? Okay, so otherwise I can probably take a shot at that. So, you know, in this entire concept of green buildings, materials play a very integral part, and people, while they are interested in talk about green buildings, so there are 2 or 3 things which really become the biggest stumbling blocks in the large scale adoption of these green buildings. One, of course, being the cost, because cost is something which is very, very, whenever we start constructing, it says that, okay, green buildings banana hai, so there must be an incremental cost which will be associated with it. So we need to, first of all, kind of inform people that it does not cost more to design a green building or to construct a green building, provided it is done at the right time. You have to integrate all of this at the initial design stages. The second most important thing, which people are very, you know, they are not well informed about, is where do I source such material? Now, the building materials that normally go into such designs are not different to the normal course of buildings, but information about technological advancement or buildings which are materials which are much more sustainable and kind of have an impact on the way the buildings are designed. Such information is now being provided and put out in the open source, both by TERI as well as we and GRIA. We, all of us, are taking that extra mile, doing that extra effort to put such information out. Now, Ankita, during her presentation, talked about the Mahindra TERI Center of Excellence, and when she was talking about the glare indices. I would like to inform you all that since, you know, as a step, that how do you inform people about the thermal properties or the thermal conductivity of building materials, or information about such, you know, out in the public space. Now, there is very little information available, even for building practitioners. There is a lab that the Mahindra TERI Center of Excellence is essentially a lab, which is an NABL accredited lab, where such materials are being tested, and information is being put out in the open source for the benefit of the customers at large, as well as for the building practitioner. Now, I am very clear about one thing in my mind, that if you really want to scale up the adoption of green buildings, the clients have to demand for green buildings. The architect or the person who's constructing it will never come forward and say that, okay, I'm going to provide you a green building. It's we ourselves who are going to be ultimately using these buildings to demand for green buildings. And if you do that, then I think there will be a radical shift in the way the markets operate. So, yeah, so I think, I hope I have been able to answer some of the questions that Mr. Bish has.
Perfect, sir. Perfect, sir.
Yeah, Sanjay sir, I would.
Yeah, Priyam, go ahead.
Sanjay sir, Priyam just said, yeah. So actually, I was muted through host, so could not able to unmute myself. Yeah. So going on what Sanjay sir is saying, that building property, construction material property is very important, and we have a test NABL certified lab over here. So thermophysical measurement of thermophysical properties can be the most substantial step, because material properties definitely enhance the heat exchange process, so it directly affects your indoor temperatures. So yeah, adding to it,
Thank you.
consideration of
Alroy, you can go ahead. Alroy, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
I wanted to ask a question. My question was that ISHRE and ASHRE both have, given their recommendations, and we have read these recommendations. Now, there are certain other things also when we talk of the efficiency of a building, especially for the indoor air quality. There are different type of filters that are available. You spoke of the HEPA filters, there are MERV filters, there are UV filters, and what we would like to know is that even there is an EAC filter which one of the companies have come out with, which says that it is found to be 87% more effective. What is your suggestion? Because see, otherwise also if you go to see from an environment point of view, you have the normal media filters where there is a linear life cycle for them, where they are made of coal or something, or you have filters which are made from polyester fibers. Ultimately, they go either to a landfill or to an incinerator. In terms of a circular cycle, they are they are made out of aluminium, and they generally land up into the electronic air cleaner. So I would just like to understand, what is the best type of filters to be used? HEPA filters, I understand, are very costly, and most of our facilities really don't require it. Reason being, we do not have hospitals. Unless and until you are working in a hospital, HEPA filters are very effective. But what about UV filters and MERV filters, please?
Priyam, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. As you mentioned, that HEPA filter has been recommended by ASHRE and ISHRE for mainly for hospitals, because they have this problem of waste disposable, and continuously there is higher risk to contamination of COVID. But then UV filters and MERV filters, basically MERV are more advanced version, and in comparison to UV, I think MERV are relatively better in this in the present scenario. That is what I would like to suggest. Yeah.
No, but see, by using a MERV filter, you would also increase your consumption of electricity, because your motors are there, and they would be working more in terms of, the efficiency also goes down in terms of that. So how do you balance it actually for a facility? Because see, many of the buildings are already built. So now it is a retrofit that we need to do. Retrofit in terms of either adding UV filters or either adding a MERV filter, or maybe even a HEPA filter.
Yeah.
And retrofit, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time. It takes about at least 3 to 4 weeks, because as on date, because we were also trying, these filters are not available. And the procuring of these filters also is taking a lot of time. So what is the best alternative in these circumstances?
So I would suggest that you can play around with your operating hours. Like if you have a office building, then definitely you have particular set of hours you can operate. Plus ventilation can also play a key role in improving your indoor air quality. So maybe you can night ventilate the building, which will lower down your bills on cooling. And then substantially, because you right now the priority is the health of people, so maybe we can look at installing these filters, and for some time at least pay costs on operating these.
No, so Priyam, you don't talk only of the present times. Forget about the present times. We talk of normal times. Just imagine that the situation was a normal, and how would you address this? The problem that he has raised. How would you provide a solution to it?
So regarding the filters, I think if we have a centralized air conditioning building also, then there has been a device which is being coming, that is dedicated outdoor air system. So through that also there are filters which filter your incoming fresh air, and this can also like play a key role in improving your freshness factor inside the building, and simultaneously at lower cost. So in case we are looking at some not very
Yeah.
costly options, then
No. Actually, what they also say is that there are two major factors which you have to look after. One is the filtration and one is the ventilation part.
yeah.
So if you can balance both of them, even then there is a solution to it. The second question was to where we spoke of the ABC part of it. For the acoustics part of it. Now, under the present circumstances of social distancing, how do you propose to take this ABC, the formula for ABC forward, please?
Yeah.
So
I think
in the
Ankita was the one who gave
Ankita.
that.
yes, sir.
Go ahead.
So given that the current norms of operating an office already ask us to maybe work maybe on a 50% attendance, and we already maintaining social distancing, we are not actually engaging on in contact with our colleagues right now. So I think this would get like automatically get corrected. But apart from that, as you were saying, the retrofits, again, like you mentioned, it takes 3 to 4 weeks of time to do it from scratch and everything.
True.
And right now I think we
Hello.
Ankita,
sir, can you hear me?
No, we were not
Yeah.
able to hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. In
Yes.
between, you were not able to hear. Yes.
Okay, so what I meant was retrofitting presents a good option, but probably if we cannot do it immediately because it requires engaging with a lot of technical support. Having certain surfaces and having certain surface materials also help. Like rather than having very solid materials all the time, having upholstered and cushioned surfaces help. Like they also act as kind of an acoustic material. So if we already had that in place, that could help. But yes, engaging in any kind of new treatment would be a little difficult right now. I agree with that.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question, sir.
Anybody else?
So in any case, I think by and large, we are in that situation. I mean, this is a general thing which I would like to leave with you all, that we are in that situation where you heard when the presentation was begun by Priyam. She said that bulk of our infrastructure is yet to be put in place, and that would be probably in place by 2030. So that gives us an edge. If you look at the Western world, they're not the new buildings that are the problem. The problem is of retrofits, and they are carrying out large-scale retrofits in their existing buildings, in their existing building stock. We are on that part of the world where a lot of our building stock is yet to come up. So learning from the ills of the West, or what mistakes they had made, we don't need to kind of reinvent the wheel here, and we don't need to kind of make the same mistakes. So that gives us an edge over them. And that's the reason why we say, and the government pushing for that building codes need to be adopted in all sincerity, make sure that your designs are, you don't copy from the West, and you don't have these glass buildings around us. Why? Because we are in a different climatic zone. There, if they construct glass buildings and they absorb the heat, it doesn't matter. Why? Because their heating loads come down because of the natural, the heating that the external, the artificial heating requirements go down. While on the other side, if we are going to be adopting the same kind of design facades or the building facades that are used in the Western world in colder climates, in a hot country like ours, then obviously there is going to be there's a lot of heat trapped inside your buildings, and then you will have to push in so much of extra air conditioning loads to cool these buildings. So, and that's why we are talking about, all of the things that we talk about, the solar passive design, and we talk about, integrating all of the sustainability aspects into your initial design stages. Those become very important, and that is nothing but a green building. And that is what exactly, that not only at the design stage, but at the design, construction, and operational stages, the building gets optimized. So when you're using resources, they are optimized. When you are then operating the buildings, then they are, they operate at much lower cost. And then the benefits, and people are always saying that, oh, green buildings may add up to my initial capital cost and all of that, not realizing that when they start operating, then there is, they enjoy better comforts, healthier environments, reduced electricity bills, reduced water consumption, lesser waste being generated. So all of that, which will then help them to kind of, not put that extra load on their costs as well as on themselves. So that's why we say that it's like penny wise, pound foolish. And probably you would, if at all, I mean, there are enough cases where we've seen that the green buildings don't add to the incremental cost. So even if you were to pay, say, an extra 2%, 5%, depending on the kind of interventions that one makes, you will recover them maybe in 2 or 3 years. And your building stands there for about what? The life of a building, if you see, as per the norms prescribed, I think 60 years is the calculated life of a building. And they stand much beyond that. It's not that at the end of 60 years, the building is gone. So buildings are there for hundreds of years, right? So if you are able to recover your costs in the initial, the small capital cost that you may have incurred, you are going to recover it through the paybacks only in 2 or 3 years. Then why should you not, operate out of these green buildings and live in better, healthier comforts? And I think the pandemic has left us with a message very clear, loud and clear, that look, these are environments that one needs to be in. We need to be operating out of healthier entities. And you look at what we are doing to our offices and to our homes right now. We are just making them healthier entities to be living out of, because we are all very scared and our health is foremost. So obviously, green buildings, since they provide all of this, and it comes as not a added feature, but it is a part of the the intent. So I think it's high time that we start adopting all of this as we go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I could see another question I would like to take it on. Could you please touch upon using solar panels as building facade is exposed to sunlight? Probably is meaning that the facade itself to be used as solar panels we're seeing across the world.
Yeah, so there is this concept of integrated, Priyam, would you like to say? Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah.
IBP,
yeah. It is building integrated photovoltaics. So BIPV.
Yeah.
So
BIPV,
yeah. So it is basically you are constructing your windows out of a PV panel. So while providing you daylight, and also there are many transparent PV panels are available. So you are providing daylight as well as you are serving your facades as a
generator,
like electricity generator for your building.
Yeah. But then you see all of these things now. When you are doing all of these things, technology always comes at a cost, right? So you should be prepared. I mean, there are when we've gone and visited buildings across outside of across the globe, Now, Ankita talked about visual comforts and glare and all of that. Now, blinds is something which is, if you look at all of these glass buildings that we see, whether in the NCR or anywhere, any part of our country, you would find all of these buildings operating with blinds on the inside, right? You put the blinds inside. Now, what happens is that you're only providing the treatment to the glare that she talked about, to cut out the incidental rays that are coming into the building. But the heat, what is being done, you know, because of the glass facade, they all get heated. Now, had these blinds been put outside on the facade, then probably you would be able to do both the things, that cut out the glare as well as not let the direct incidental rays come into and heat the buildings and allow the heat to come in, right? So, but then there are self-operating blinds which are very expensive. You can alter the angle of the blinds along, I mean, with the direction of the sun, all of that. So we've seen all of this outside in European countries and all of them, but it's so expensive technology, and would we? So rather than doing that and completely depending on technology, what we say is that why don't we optimize our openings? You know, why don't we make sure that on some facades where there is going to be a lot of sun, the south side and the west side, as they say, and we have lesser openings on that side, and we have the openings on the other side, the northern and the eastern side. So all of those things, I think a combination of this needs to do. But you can start doing all of these things, like your building can start generating electricity, and by putting solar panels and by all of these things, you probably need not have any grid connection. Your loads from the grid can be minimized to the extent possible. But then all of these technological interventions come at a cost. So we should be prepared to, be willing to spend that extra capital money.
Thank you, sir. I suppose that's it. A good session we had today. Thank you, Mr. Seth, Priyam, and Ankita. In the continuation of the sessions that we had earlier with you, the earlier webinar, again, the building fitness indicator, which was developed by you all only. In continuation of that, the talk today on green buildings, I think it's been a wonderful talk today, sir. We are really enlightened. And this is one topic which is close to every facility manager's heart. Invariably, every day, they come across these questions where people are asking them, they want to change the seat, the light's not comfortable, they're getting the glare from the glass side, the seat is south facing or west facing, they get a lot of heat during the summers. So, and the maintenance managers at his wit's end, he's already keeping the temperatures at 22 and a lower level, but the person sitting near the facade is still feeling warm. So those kind of questions come in every day. So these 8 fundamentals that you mentioned, Mr. Seth, wonderful. We understand that, but getting them all together at one place and understanding them and the effect they have, the daily effect that they have on our activities is wonderful, sir. Being in the services, guys, one had an opportunity to go all around. So I remember, Mr. Seth, in the 50s and 60s, there used to be in the army, we used to have non-fan stations. Places like Nashik, Devlali, Pune, Maharashtra, they have sanatoriums over there. And one didn't even need a fan. The managers and executives of today won't really understand that they didn't even have a fan over there. And gradually in the 60s, they came to fan. They provided one odd fan, which used to be hung from that huge high ceiling. And we used to take off at its own speed. And thereafter, then the 80s, early 80s, we started getting coolers and limited ACs used to be in the hospitals and only some hotels and hospitals only. And we are in a stage now where almost every house has got a number of every bedroom and drawing rooms, everybody's got so many ACs. And of course, our facilities have the bigger chillers and bigger cooling systems. So I think very important that we have to go back to the design board. We have to, when we start looking at new buildings or even retrofitting, guys, we have to do a little bit for the environment, for Mother Earth.
And it is, and you very rightly said, sir. I think the olden times we also had. See, it's very simple. The ceilings were high. We had ventilators on top. We used to open them during the during the summer season so that the warm air would go out of it, and then the fresh air would come in and take its place, and it would be naturally ventilated and cool buildings. So the concepts are very simple, easy scientific methods of doing it, and our dependence on technology was very minimal. It was minimalistic, right? So we understand that right now land prices have become very high. You cannot afford to have buildings maybe designed like that, but then we can probably design, spend some time in planning and putting our designs together in a much more integrated manner, which will eventually lead to minimizing the operation, not only lead to better designs and healthier and thermally comfortable buildings, but also reduce operations in terms of costs and all of that. So I think that's the key.
Perfect, sir. Perfect. So, folks, you take your ideas from here, go back. I'm sure I'm very much enlightened today. I'm sure you all would be also similar. So take these ideas back. Whenever we have an opportunity, we have to do a little bit for the environment. We have this responsibility towards the environment. And this pandemic of COVID has only shown it to us how much badly we need this to be done. So take those small steps, big steps in whichever level that you are coming forward and helping us. You're always welcome. You saw their information available on their site also. They've shared their IDs also. You're welcome to share questions with them. Mr. Seth mentioned that also. And we request Mr. Seth that the presentation normally they do share with us, and we upload it because some of you were asking for the presentation. This will be on our site tomorrow, and you could fall back and take your queries from there. People have been asking about, somebody's asking about this temperatures of comfortable temperature. So I suppose some of those questions which coming from the slides, you'd be able to get from there. Once again, thank you, Mr. Seth. It's always a pleasure to hear you and always a pleasure to listen to you and your team. I only look forward that we get some more gyan from you in the days as we go forward. It's all very educative learnings, and the best part is it is something which is there for us. That's the most important part. That the noble task that you're performing, it's really a divinely task that you're performing for the environment, for Earth. We hope and pray that you all continue to perform in a similar manner and keep enlightening us and the environment, sir. And we look forward to such gyan more and more in the future also.
Thank you very much, sir. And it's a pleasure. And I thank my colleagues on my own behalf as well as on behalf of Terry and my own colleagues.
So that's what I.
Thank you very much.
Samir, Sam, you want to say something? Your mic is gone on. Jatin, I think Samir wanted to speak. His mic is gone on mute.
No.
Can you quickly unmute him?
No, I think he was probably on another call. So.
Okay, fine. So that's it. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mr. Seth. Thanks, Priyam and Ankita.
Thank you.
You all have been wonderful. And like I mentioned, this is not the final answer. We will look forward to some more information also in the future.
Sure.
We will keep in touch. And thank you folks for joining in. We continue this activity. Delhi NCR and Northern Chapter, Chandigarh, Jaipur all put together have been providing you this activity every Tuesday. Look forward towards your joining in similar manner in the future also. All the very best. Stay safe and please take care. Bye-bye, sir. Bye-bye. All the best, sir.
Bye.
Thank you so much.